Good morning, Bruce. Morning,
Hello.
Longoria here with Live Now Relocation, and I have Bruce Henches on the line with me. Bruce is Vice President at Spellman Brady and a real friend of Live Now Relocation. Thank you for joining me this morning, Bruce.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Maureen.
You bet. Well, Bruce and I and Lisa Burns, our co-founder, have been talking for about a year now. And I don't know if you realize this, Bruce, but you have actually been a big inspiration around some of the things that we're doing at Live Now. And actually, one of our favorite lines to use is no longer do you need to carry around a 3-ring binder.
Oh, yeah.
I know what you carried around, Bruce, for so long, but the reason we are talking today is because you've had your own journey as the adult child of a parent that needed to go into a memory care community. And we just wanted to talk through that journey with you a little bit and what it was like for you as an adult child, managing the logistical aspects of it, the physical aspects of it, and the emotional aspects of it all. And so appreciate you joining us this morning. And why don't we just start by you giving us a little bit of background of what transpired with your situation with your mom.
Yeah. So thank you, Maureen. So I live in St. Louis, Missouri, but I was born and raised in Dyersville, Iowa. So it's about 6 hours away. And that's where my mom lived, I should say. My dad passed away, in 2016. My mom was living by herself for a few years, but it really, after he passed, it exposed her weaknesses, and she had definitely some memory issues, and we tried to work around that with home health care and having somebody come in the home for about 4 hours a day and managing that. And it just wasn't enough. And really the tipping point for that is I got a call from, it's a little small town of Dyersville, 4,000 people. I got a call from the grocery store manager and said, hey, your mom is in the store and she's got 2 black eyes. And that was my, kind of call. And I drove up there, and she didn't know what happened. She didn't know she had black eyes and didn't know what happened. And I never did find out what happened. But that was when I said, I needed to do something. And that something was get her someplace safe. And I just didn't, living in a home for 52 years, 2-story, it was just too much. And I did a little homework in St. Louis area. Fortunately, we're in the interiors business. We had just completed a project, so it was brand new, Bethesda Hawthorne in St. Louis, and they had a memory unit, and they had some openings. There was a 20-person unit. They had about 3 openings left, and I did some homework in that, along with some other communities, but really kind of zeroed in on Bethesda Hawthorne as the right place for my mom, location-wise and amenity-wise. It just had a good feel. But I literally went up with my brother and picked up my mom and said that we were coming down to St. Louis to visit for Christmas. And I loaded up all our clothes. And she thought, hey, I'm taking a lot of clothes. And I'm like, well, you'll be here for a while. So I grabbed a lot of her clothes, put it in the car, and I drove off. When I drove off, my brother and nephew were right behind me with a U-Haul, and they grabbed furniture. They grabbed her bedroom set. They grabbed a sofa and occasionally, TV set, entertainment center, stuff like that. And then I brought her down to St. Louis. We had my mom at my house for a few days, and then during the night and spare hours, my brother and I and wife set up her apartment. I'd already bought, committed to the community, and we set up her apartment. And then like December 22nd, we moved her in, and she did not know. But we put when we moved her in, she toured the community. She did not like it. It was not home. And then I said, let's just look at one of the units and then we'll go. So we went to one of the units, and that's where we had it set up with all of her furniture, all of the pictures on the wall. and candles, and it just the living room looked very much like ours at home. And she walked in, and it just had a good feel, and it felt safe, and that was the start for her. I mean, she didn't want to stay there, but was kind of figuring out that this was a transition for her.
That is such a beautiful story of a son's undying love for a mother. I can't tell you, Bruce, really, I'm choked up over that. What the lengths that you went to, but I will add to that, your time in senior living, I'm sure, prepared you to understand how important it was to set up that unit with all of her things as you introduced her to it, right? My sister, or one of my best friends who's like a sister to me, did something very similar when her mom was moving from assisted living to memory care in a community. She took her mom and watched some movies in another room while her siblings did exactly that. Took all her stuff out of the one room, moved into the other, down to the pictures on the wall, so that it wouldn't be disruptive, right? So what you did for your mom is really absolutely amazing. And I think adult children wouldn't have the knowledge to understand how important what you did is, right?
Well, we had one chance to get it right, and one chance only, because she was walking in the parking lot, and I grabbed her by the arm and said, "Let's just look at one of the units while we're here," So we really had one chance to get it right, and when with her dementia, there's anger, and there's a lot of different emotions that go through it, and she had plenty of anger issues. She didn't want to do it, but we just knew, between my brother and my wife and I, we just knew we had one shot to get it right.
Yeah. Well, hats off to you for doing it with such love and empathy. So you got her moved in, and luckily she's near you, which is beautiful, because that distance issue is just adds so much more stress to the situation, and difficult management. Talk to us a little bit about then. You got her settled in the community, but now she still had this home, and all of the stuff in it. I know you took some of the things, but we know you can only take so much, and there's so much left behind. How did you manage all that, not living in that area?
Yeah, well, once I got her back, down to St. Louis into a memory care unit, it was a peace of mind that, number one, she was safe. But then, I could visit her, regularly, versus going up every 2-3 weeks, driving 6 hours.
Yeah.
But her home, it was the home I grew up in for 52 years. And our first attempt at downsizing, we had a dumpster there. My brother and I were up there, and we were just taking things, clearing out the basement of, just things that just weren't worth keeping. But for every piece that we took to the dumpster, my mom would walk behind us and take it right back out. And so we thought, oh boy, this isn't working. We can't have her around while we do this. So that's where having her and moving her down to St. Louis, then we could focus in on the house. So it's kind of is a step-by-step process. We needed to get mom safe. We needed to get her, care. And then it kind of freed up our time that we could go back up to Iowa over a few weekends and clear out a house and really, organize and prep and get it prepped for sale. And we had an auction group came in, and they cleaned out the house, and they had a sale at one of the sales barns in town, and did that over a period of time. But that was the sale of the home. At first it was emotional, but after a while it just became a lot of work, and it just needed to get done. And quite honestly, we needed the money to sell the home to pay for mom's care at the community. So it's financially it just needed to be done.
And that's the case in most situations. People's homes are paid off, and that's where a lot of their financial resources are, and that's why it's important to get the home sold so often. We recognize that for sure. So it sounds like you brought a group in to help with the cleaning out of the house, which is hugely helpful. I've had so many friends that said they've done it themselves and literally spent 2 weeks day in, day out, just doing all of that on their own. And, when I share with them that there's resources that could do that for, anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, or like, that would be the best money that we would have ever spent. And it gets really emotional too, when you've got, yourself and a sibling, and then you're looking at these things. I love the Senior Move managers and what they bring to these experiences, because they just make it so much easier and less stressful for the seniors and their children, by doing that for them and helping them through that process. Then how much time would you say you dedicated just to cleaning out the home and getting it ready for market? Not even just like the selling process, but just getting it ready and cleaning out the home.
Boy, I don't know. I would think that was 2 to 3 months.
Wow.
And it was multiple trips, and really we did it the hard way. Quite honestly, we did it ourselves until we found someone that could aid us in selling the personal property.
Yeah.
And I just needed to wrap my head around the process and just understand who to call. We didn't know who to call. Luckily, one fortunate thing was my dad and grandfather were in the hardware business for over 77 years in this community, and there's a historical society in Dyersville, and they were interested in a lot of the history and things, and they took a lot of things from the home, and we donated, and that kind of felt good. That felt good from our aspect, that we could leave a legacy behind. We were leaving town, but we left some important things behind, and that really felt good. But then, having resources that could clean out a home and auction the products off, and it was a lot of time, but I tell you, we couldn't do it alone. We needed help.
Yeah. Well, and just to be clear too, this was before Live Now ever existed. Now, had we existed, Bruce, you would have picked up the phone and called us.
Correct. But at the time, and that's where, gosh, I've been in the senior living industry for 20 plus years. I didn't know, I worked it from a business side, not the personal side. So I did not know, and I did not use the resources, and I didn't make the proper phone calls until much too late, until I started figuring this out with my mom's journey, that there's a better way.
Yeah. Well, and I think most people, especially the adult children, don't understand that our services can be offered at the community level to the seniors, but it's really so often the adult child behind the scenes that's managing this process and whatnot, and oftentimes like what you were doing from a distance. So you finally got it cleaned out. How did you find a real estate agent, and knowing that it was the right real estate agent? And then, did you have to get some movers involved? I know you said you had the U-Haul, but were there other things that you were moving from the house, or did you just then at that point donate anything left?
Yeah, we moved the things. We only kept things that could fit in my mom's apartment. So okay. One bedroom, one living room, and we took that in pictures. Everything else was auctioned off. And luckily in small town Iowa, I had a high school classmate that was a real estate agent. So she listed the home for us, and it sold relatively quick. I would think it sold probably in 2 months' time.
Mm-hmm. And so was that a time-consuming process for you as well?
Yeah, but it was, just understanding all of that. So it was a lot of things happening. It was trying to deal with the sale of a home, and then trying to, spend time with my mom in the new community and transition her there. And just also understanding too, my dad had passed 2 years previously. And what I put together was all this information, and I had a 3-ring binder. I called it the binder of life, that had all the insurance policies and information that you just need to know as an adult child from your parents. And one of those things was a long-term care life insurance policy that I had to dig into and understand, and what that meant, and how understand Social Security and what that meant, and how I could pay the bills for my mom, and using her assets that she had and some of mine to make that happen.
and finding all these documents, did you have to go through like the place, the file cabinet or whatever in the house and just find all these things and try to get it organized?
Yeah, I did. I did. And luckily, you know, the only saving grace to this, before my dad passed, he was in the hospital for 3 weeks. And that was those 3 weeks was the time that he knew his time was short. And that's the time we spent going through and putting a plan together. And him sharing where things were, and who to contact and things like that. So I had a little bit of a jump start, which I was super, super fortunate with. Not everybody has that chance. So
no, especially if something happens by surprise, right? You know, that's another big part of this process that we're trying to solve for is, okay, so it's time for the parent to move into a community, getting all those documents organized, right? And in one place. I mean, everything should be digital now, in a, you know, a hyper secure place for that stuff, and determining who has access to what. That's another big piece of, you know, what we're doing at Live Now, aside from managing all the logistics of finding the movers, the senior move manager, the real estate agents, the right real estate agent, and then also helping the senior or the adult child find a place to put all those documents. That's the time to do it. There, you know, it's all about organizing, downsizing at that point. That is the time to look at that as well. And
we went through, luckily, a few years prior, when my dad was still around, I convinced them to transfer and make me the power of attorney for medical and financial. So that was a huge step, and that allowed me to do a lot of the things. And then the documents I kept them all on my phone on a program. So I had access to them since they were 6 hours away. You know, you need access to a lot of information quickly. So fortunately, I had all that on my phone.
Absolutely, it's super important. So this
one other thing, we met, and I met with an estate planning firm, a law firm that, you know, just understood, and it helped me understand, you know, from a senior perspective, you know, estate planning services and what is all needed to make this transition, because I was concerned moving from state to state, what that looked like, and really transferring those things to me from my parents. So
that's huge. That you're right, because you don't think about that, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh.
yeah. I needed guidance on that, so I made those contacts. That was a couple of years prior to moving my mom.
Yeah. How did you figure out? So, you know, the title and everything was in your mom's name probably at that point for the house. How did you manage through all of that?
Yeah, we just put that. We created a trust, a family trust, and you know, moved assets, you know, cars and in the home into that, and just, you know, wanted to understand, you know, and you know, the different bank accounts they had, you know, 5 different bank accounts scattered around. So I had to go around to all the different banks and ask a lot of questions in the community. So yeah. And how long would you say from start to finish this journey took? You said it was like around December that your mom moved in, December 22nd, into the community. And when was it all kind of completed as far as the home sale, like everything was done and the other, you know, part? And I would say by May. So probably 5 months that we really had it, that I felt comfortable that, you know, the sale of the home and, you know, we went through, you know, all of the things about selling a home and the negotiations back and forth and the repairs you have to make and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it took some time.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. And, you know, that's why I think a lot of adult children or seniors will take advantage of bridge loans, because they might need that money up front, right? To put a parent in a community to cover their cost of care. And it does take a while. No matter when the homes were selling like hotcakes, and those days are done now. Even then, you know, it takes, if it sells tomorrow, it's going to take probably another 30 days before you see resources from that. This was before that. And I was the bridge loan. So I had, you know, luckily I had a contractor friend that could make the home more saleable.
by some repairs, and we just, I did a pre-sale kind of walkthrough that we wanted to, fix the low hanging fruit, so to speak. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I took care of that. So.
And that's important to do because you do want to get top dollar for their home. Let's face it, millennials right now, if the pictures show, outdated things and whatnot, they swipe right over it. They sit on their couches and then they might look at 100 homes and go visit 3.
Yeah.
And so it is really important. It's really important that people choose good agents that provide them with the right marketing resources too. Things like virtual renovation. So if the kitchen needs to be updated, they could put a picture of a kitchen that is updated on that MLS listing. And so the millennial isn't going to just swipe past it because they'll see an updated kitchen. So they won't dismiss that listing right away. And when I say millennials, I'm not being very fair. It could be anybody, but usually the people buying homes and, are 25 to 45, right? And that's the big market. And so we have to play to that market. And HGTV didn't do us any favors by making every home look absolutely perfect and white and gray and
yeah. And this was a home of 52 years that needed updates.
Yeah.
And so that's where we needed to clear it. To sell it, we needed to clear it out, and that my parents' generation were they didn't throw out much. They kept a little bit of everything. So we had to make sure it was a good, clean property to walk through.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of that takes a lot of work. And I think that is the gist of what we're kind of talking about today. Like I always say, it's a 3-part problem, right? There's the emotional that goes along with this. That in of itself is purely exhausting. There's the physical aspect, just the clearing out the house and being involved in that, being there for your mom, setting up her unit, all of that is physically draining. And then there's a logistical, which is behind the scenes, all of those things that you're doing, the getting the agent on board, getting the state, salesperson on board, all of that. So it's a 3-pronged situation here that is really just beyond exhausting, I think, for the adult children or the senior if they're managing it on their own, especially at that age, that I think that people lose sight of. Just this week, my own sister was selling her place. She's going to downsize, and she was packing all her stuff around. I've never seen her look so exhausted in my life. And this is a woman that doesn't sleep. And she looked so exhausted, and she had the resources to have them packed, but she just wanted to do some of it herself. And so, the good news is, there's Live Now Relocation that's come along to really take so much of that pressure off of the adult children and the seniors, the emotional pressure off, the physical and the logistical, for sure the logistical, but the physical in the sense that there are people that can do this for you. And just by bringing those resources to the table and giving people the option to make decisions as to, where they want to tap into resources. Like you said, you didn't know a lot of these resources existed. And it's important to offer those.
Yeah. And you want to do, so you're doing all these things, but really the end result is you want to spend time with your loved one in the community in their new environment and have them transition. And that's where, that's the goal of all of this. So that front end is so, it's emotional and it's physically tapping. But the goal is to, for me, was to bring my mom to a community so she can transition, so she's safe. And she thrived once she was in the community, once she became involved in the daily activities. And, that was the goal. But boy, it felt like a long road to get there. But it was, when she got set up and familiar with her surroundings, really she thrived. So it was a good move for her. So.
Well, and it always is. It always is. It really, they will thrive. But, it reminds me of, I have a friend of mine a couple of years ago. She moved her parents into assisted living. Mom had memory, dad was fine. And she said, Maureen, I just spent 2 weeks cleaning out the house, literally cleaning out the house. Then there was putting it on the market. and she went on very much a journey like yours. And she said, if I looked at 5 different communities, she goes, if just one of them would have offered services like what you guys offer at Live Now Relocation, she goes, that would have spoke volumes to me about how they were going to care for my mom and dad. And I would have chosen that community. Not just because they were going to provide me with those resources, which were huge, but it was a reflection, in my opinion, of how they would have cared for my parents. And she says, I'm so bitter. I didn't have the time to spend with them in the community. And you said the same thing. You would have rather spent that time with the parent, getting them settled. And she goes, I was too busy doing all this stuff, rather than being with them at the community, making sure they were getting settled. I would have visited them at the community every day and had lunch with them and things like this instead. And she said, so, I mean, if you had looked at a community, Bruce, that had offered that sort of assistance, would it have changed your opinion about that community?
Well, yeah, I didn't know. And I visited probably 5 to 7 different communities, and it was never mentioned. And I think a lot of them shied away from because it was, a multi, a different 6-hour move. It was local. I think they would have offered, but it was never brought up at any of the communities that I spoke with. So I didn't even know it was an option. So
yeah. Well, and I think that's probably a good place to end our conversation. It is a journey for the adult children when they are involved in managing the process. And we want to make it easier on them. We want to make it easier on the senior. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing is to free up the adult child to be able to spend the time with the parent is just life-changing for everybody involved, and certainly our goal with our services. Bruce, a million thanks for sharing your journey with us. I think there's a lot of adult children that could really relate to what you went through. I know that there's a lot that have had your journey, actually, while it was extremely labor intensive and whatnot, seemed to go pretty smoothly. There's been a lot of adult children that this journey hasn't gone so smoothly. And, it's important people know that there are resources out there for them to support them during this process and make it easier so that they can spend their time with their parent where they want to be. So a million thanks, Bruce. You're the best.
Thank you, Marina. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
We're your biggest fan, and we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
I appreciate the time always.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce.